Hi, Ty, for not calling the police for my husband. On a Friday night, my husband went out to pick up pizza. When he got home, he looked really shaken. I asked what was wrong, and he told me he'd hit a snowbank and damaged my car. I told him not to worry about it at all. We don't need to fix it, and I honestly don't care about cosmetic damage. But even after that, he still seemed tense. We sat down to eat, but something felt off. Later, he told me he needed to confess something. I asked what was going on, and that's when he admitted he hadn't hit a snowbank at all. He'd hit another car in a parking lot and driven away. I was shocked, mostly because he'd lied to me. I didn't want to explode in the moment, so I pushed that conversation aside and focused on what to do next. I told him he should go back and see if the car was still there so he could leave his insurance information. He went back out and came home saying the other car was gone. I suggested calling the restaurant where it happened to see if anyone had left their contact info. He asked me to call for him, so I did. I explained what happened to an employee, asked if the person who'd been hit had left any information. They hadn't. And then I gave my husband's details so they could write it down. The call cut off while she was writing, so my husband called back to make sure they had everything. After that, I posted anonymously on Nextdoor to see if anyone had been hit that night. Someone had, but it was in a completely different location. I also posted on Avo asking what kind of legal trouble my husband could face if we couldn't find the other driver to exchange insurance information. At that point, my husband asked if I thought we should call the police. I told him he could if he wanted to, but I didn't want to make the call myself. We looked up the police website and saw that for non-emergencies, they recommended waiting until business hours and coming in person. Since I didn't want to call, he decided he'd go in the next day. That night, he spiraled emotionally. He kept saying how low he felt like a terrible person. I comforted him, told him anyone could panic, that it didn't define who he was, that I loved him and didn't see him differently. I tried to reassure him as much as I could. The next day, while I was at work, the police came to our house. He ended up getting a ticket for the hit and run. I suggested he get a lawyer, and I went with him to the appointment. After all of this, he started saying he wished he'd had someone to help him think clearly that night, that he'd been panicking and needed someone to step in and call the police or force him to do it. He said he wished he'd had a partner who could have done that for him. Then he asked me to admit that this was partially my fault. I honestly don't even remember what I said the first time he brought it up, but the next day he brought it up again and said I needed to admit fault because I hadn't stepped up as a partner. Eventually I said fine. Yes, it probably would have been better if I had called the police or made him do it. I told him I didn't know what I was supposed to do in that situation because I'd never dealt with anything like that before. He said I could have researched more. I said, yeah, I guess. I can take the blame if it makes him feel better, but I don't want to be someone else's moral compass. I'm not perfect. I don't know everything. What really bothers me is realizing that I'm willing to do things just to ease his discomfort, but he doesn't seem to do the same for me. He was worried that the hit and run would make me see him differently. But honestly, it's his behavior afterward that has me questioning everything. And I never even brought up the fact that he lied to me in the first place. I also forgot to mention that I filed the insurance claim for him that same night too.